Welcome back to another episode of the Pax What She Said podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Maggie Loney, joined as always by Perri Goldstein. And as promised, we are here to talk Monday morning, Victory Monday. And I think that sums it up. You love a division rivalry win. Packers 1-2 in the division so far this season. But a really ugly win that they scraped out at the last minute, and wins all count the same. Matt LaFleur said, you're not going to apologize for winning in this league, but if there was ever a question mark on a victory, this one just didn't feel like the dominance that we were expecting against the caliber of opponent. So Perri, let's talk about it.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really deserve to win, and they didn't measure up against an opponent that is not as good as them by any metric. I'm sure we'll talk through them. They won on a last minute lucky, great play, great play, but and we can talk about special teams showing up, finally. But one of those where there's no deserve in the NFL, but they didn't deserve to win this game based on the way that they played.
Yeah, so let's start maybe with the Packers offense, because as we were talking about this game, we had said, the offense seems fine. They seem to be rolling. We'll give you your flowers for Christian Watson. I'll let you talk about that in a lot more detail here in a second, but Jordan Love played really well. One of the keys to this game was him starting to feel healthy and feeling like himself. And yes, he threw the pick in the red zone that, arguably cost them 7 points. Looked like it would have been a touchdown or close to it otherwise. But he had a really nice game, 261 yards, really efficient, 13 completions only took 1 sack, 113 rating. So even with the pick, still a really nice day from him. The offense as a whole kind of looked like they were humming for most of the day, but go ahead. What are your thoughts on the offensive performance?
I mean, it was great to see Jordan look healthy, first of all.
Right.
Like it really did look like he finally has his full mobility back, which cannot be understated. He ran for some yardage, and that's not something that he's been able to do the last few weeks. Okay, fine. I have a lot of thoughts on the offense because look, this is a complimentary game, and they looked great when they were on the field. They were running the football effectively. Jordan was able to make some really great throws. Some big plays happened in this game, which we knew would happen against this Bears defense. The Bears defense in the red zone showed up just like we said it would. They're one of the best in the red zone in the league. They showed it, right, in some of those moments, especially on that fourth down. But when your defense is giving up really long drives and the opposing offense is on the field so much, you just don't get opportunities to score. So you have to make the most of it. And I felt like the announcers, because I got the Brady announcers, they talked about that a lot. They said, like, first half, the Packers only had 3 possessions, right? And they were only able to score on one of them. And obviously they were able to score more in the second half, but you have to be able to finish drives. And I thought the decision to go for it on fourth down was actually like an interesting one, because if you have those 3 points at the end of the game, it's not as big of a decision. It's fine. It's hindsight hindsight's 2020, but I also still have questions about Matt's play calling down in the red zone, which we can probably talk about. Like, you're running Josh Jacobs so effectively up the middle, but you decide to do an end around with Jaden Reed. And I don't think that those plays, especially in condensed yardage, are working. I think teams are sniffing them out really easily. I think they need to get thrown out of the playbook. Matt has always had like really interesting stuff down there. Like, he's used some like more condensed like mesh concepts in the end zone. He's used the tight end leak out, and we haven't really seen those. And so, like, while I'm okay with him getting creative, I'd like him to get creative pushing the ball into the end zone, not having it be behind the line of scrimmage, because every time the Packers do that, it feels like defensive fronts just like hit them and they lose yardage. I'll stop there. We can talk about Christian Watson in a second, but I think like the offense does look much better, and I think they're moving the ball effectively. It's just like getting a little too cute in the red zone, and then they're not scoring.
Yeah, I mean, agreed 100%. I think Jordan Love healthy is all the difference that this team needs. You know, you can see the zip he's got on the ball, his ability to step into some of his throws. He scrambled really effectively. You know, we haven't necessarily seen that. I thought he protected the ball really well. You know, I know he had an interception, but there were a couple times where he just kind of chucked it out of bounds and I was like, good job, that's what we want, right? Like not like a prayer ball just like up into the air to see if someone comes down with it, like, you know, live to make another play kind of thing. So I thought, you know, he played really well. I think Christian Watson being on the same page with him really helped. You know, we saw them kind of have that connection. Jaden Reed always looks good, even though he only had a couple of receptions. One was obviously for the big touchdown. But yeah, I think the offense, you know, with their limited opportunities, played really well. Red zone struggles, we talked about it, obviously. Full agreement with you. We were texting about mesh and like, you know, trying to move the ball too creative or down to clean up. And I think that's why it's so frustrating. We know the kind of talent that this offense has. And for them to be able to drive so well and then stall out just doesn't make sense from what we're used to. And with the firepower that they have, the speed, you know, the hands, those guys would have more success than they have in the red zone. So that part is challenging, but I think Arrow's still pointing up. So it's kind of hard to say, well, going into week 12, they'll clean things up in the red zone. But if they get it figured out, like this is the time that you want that.
It's not cleaned up in the like it's getting better, right? I
Yeah.
do want to say like it's not it like to your point it is arrow up. And right, like there were less penalties, there were less drops. Like the offense did clean plenty up, and you're not going to get down to the red zone and score 100% of the time. Like this isn't the 2020 Packers with the gold zone, right? So, you know, I want to be clear about that. I think that there are certain decisions that are made that set them back, and I think especially with that end around, right? Or when he runs on second and long, and I'm just like, why you do that? Like, why, you know, like I there's just certain situational choices that I I'm not the head coach, so what do I know? And Matt is 11-0 against the Bears, so he obviously knows what he's doing. But I just want to do that. Now, things they did do great. They're throwing the Christian Watson more. I and look at what he did, 150 yards in this game. Like Christian Watson with the ball in his hands, and he had so many different. He did so much, right? He can do so much. Yes, he is a deep threat. He made that amazing diving catch that like I mean I know that they challenged it. I would have challenged it too if it was the Bears, but it was so clear that it was a catch in my opinion. He has such good like situational awareness to me, you know, to get up and continue running, even though I wish that he hadn't because I wanted them to drain the clock.
Right.
But Christian Watson needs more touches. Only 4 in this game, fine, 4 catches. I don't care. He had 150 yards. So I've been beating the drum for this for a while because he does only good things when he has the ball in his hands. And I think this game proved it. Quite frankly, like his size and his speed are such a mismatch. And I think when you can exploit that, I quite frankly think that you can exploit his skill set against any secondary. It doesn't matter like how good your cornerback is back there. You can put your all pro back there. And I'm pretty sure Christian Watson can pinpoint a go ball. And at least with his frame, it gives you a shot. So my dad and I had a little debate, which I'm curious about, like your thoughts. You know, one of his catches was in double coverage. Okay. My dad thought it was a bad decision because Tucker Kraft was open on the same play. And I said to what I just said, you give your guy a chance. You put the ball where only he can go up and get it. And with Christian Watson's size, he can go and get it. And my dad said, but it's the decision for me. It's the decision to just not take the open Tucker Craft. And I think it can go either way. I think we can be excited about something when it works and criticize it when it doesn't, and say on that play, if he gets picked or if it's a drop, like, why didn't you throw it to the open Tucker Craft? I think we'll continue to talk about this with Jordan. To be honest, I think it's an ongoing conversation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it goes back to the Jaden Reed ball earlier this season into triple coverage, where if he's ever like in the Hall of Fame, it's going on his highlight reel as like one of the best throws of his career. And if you're a couple inches off, then it's why did you make that decision? It was triple coverage. Why would you ever throw that ball in the first place? So I do think, there is a lot of truth to that, but I think it's a testament to the confidence that they're building in each other. And I like that Jordan takes those shots because we've seen earlier this year, like they haven't always been on the same page with the deep ball. Christian Watson didn't track one a couple weeks ago. And the fact that they're doing it now, and he said, hey, it's man, I'm going for it. Christian Watson is, that's what you draft him for, is the speed and his ability in man with his size. So I think the Packers have a good problem on their hands now. And it's, how do you get all of these guys targets, especially in a game like what we saw on Sunday, where they just don't have that many possessions. They don't have that many opportunities to plays. Let's shift to the not as great conversation and talk about this defense, because obviously there were some struggles. This is the best we've seen the Bears offense look in a number of weeks. They had their brand new offensive coordinator. Obviously, I thought that there was a really good game plan around Caleb Williams, simplifying the offense, giving him more opportunities to use his legs to get comfortable. Packers couldn't bring a ton of pressure. Yes, they had 3 sacks, 2 of them coming on that final drive when they needed it the most, but still allowing too many long chunk plays. We joked about it pre-show before we hit record. Right when you saw 3rd and 19, it felt like you knew they were going to get at least 15 of those yards back, if not more. And that's just not a comfortable situation to be in. And we texted about it right during the game. We tried to figure out, is it the pass rush? Is it the secondary? Is it both? Is it Jair? Does he make that much of a difference for the secondary? And if he does, then it's negligent of this front office to not have addressed the corner position in the draft or by the trade deadline. So just a real head scratcher, I think. Like, what do you think is the problem with this defense the last couple weeks?
I don't know. They've gotten like progressively less aggressive.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if that's because they don't have Ja out there, maybe, right? They don't feel like they can play as much man with Stokes and Valentine and Nixon. And I get that. I get that after watching this game. But again, to your point, like, if you feel, look, this is a hindsight conversation. They felt really high on these guys. They felt like these guys could play in this scheme, and now they're seeing that they can't. So we address this draft. Like, I don't know if this is a situation where it's necessarily negligence. If Goody really genuinely felt like Valentine looked great last season.
Yeah.
Like, no one would have thought, oh, in his second year, he's going to look significantly worse.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's not the thought process. I'm going to stand by, I hate Nixon on the boundary. Like, I do not think that it's his position. I do not think that he plays it well. I don't know. I also think, and this is fine, I'm not saying this is a negative or that I think that he is going to have a bad career or anything dramatic in that sense. He's a rookie, but I think Javad Mullard is really struggling.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think he's struggling a little bit to cover. He's struggling a little bit in his assignments. There were a few times I went and rewatched a few like of the big plays where I do think some of it was like miscommunication. I think there was like guys were not meant to be where they ended up. Right. And that's not scheme, that's execution.
Right.
So I think it's a lot of things, right? The Packers were generating pressure in this game for sure. Like, there were multiple times where I was like, oh, they're right there. And then Caleb would escape.
Yeah.
They still got 3 sacks, but we're not sitting here saying this was a great game from the pass rush. So this is a really long-winded way of me saying I have no idea. But all I know is that this was an absolutely disappointing performance. The Bears offense prior to this game had been struggling to put up points, struggling to move the ball. And sure, kudos to their new offensive coordinator for simplifying the game, for putting Caleb Williams in advantageous positions, for letting him take some easy stuff. They like picked apart the Packers zone. They ran the ball effectively. Like Caleb Williams is a weapon on the ground, and they use it against the Packers, who have been bad against mobile quarterbacks in the past. So they did a lot of good things. And if I'm a Bears fan, I'm looking at this game like, okay, maybe there's life here. I just wish it hadn't come against the team that I root for. So I think it's right now, everything's just not like firing on all cylinders, and they have to get it together like ASAP.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I mean, I think that it is challenging to pinpoint like where the issue lies. And I agree with you that I think Javon Bullard, you know, I don't know if they would get creative and put him before Evan Williams was getting snaps. Maybe Evan Williams mix things up that way. I think missing Jair is a big problem because it took Nixon out of a place that he was comfortable. We liked Nixon in the slot. He was really physical in the slot. And talk about who your best five are, and you drafted Bullard and Williams to play safety, so it's not want to test them out as boundary corners. That's really fair to them and their development either. I do think there is a challenge in trying to pinpoint who your best five are and their best alignment. You're obviously boundary corner one any day of the week. And I think Nixon, played well in the slot earlier this season when he had those opportunities, but then, do you take Bullard off the field and stifle some of his development? You drop Williams. I don't know, like, where, the creativity comes from in that secondary, or who your best five are. The inside linebacker, Quay, struggling making tackles.
Yeah.
Larry Kieran on the radio show had said, like, you missed a tackle. Those are missed tackles that cost you football games. Like, just very bluntly, very matter of factly, and it's unfortunate that it's a conversation that we keep having. I think Eric continues to be Packers defense is Cooper, just guys that I don't know if I problems we always talk about. Point of the season is like, is it the execution, or is it that the players look better on paper? Right? Like,
yeah, I think that's a question we're gonna have to ask ourselves in the off season for sure. You want to believe that it's not the players, because then that means there's a lot of rebuilding that still has to get done on that side of the ball, and we've been through so many iterations of that. And that's just bad drafting, right? I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if we can answer that right now, is I guess my response to it. I think when it came to this game, though, it was like very clearly like poor player execution that was the problem in this game. And like Larry McCarron like hit the nail on the head. Like when you take bad angles and can't tackle, no scheme's gonna fix that. You can be on your fourth, fifth, sixth defensive coordinator. It does not matter, right? If you're starting inside linebacker can't make one of the most obvious tackles on fourth down in the history of the world, you're going to let the other team move the chains every single time. So, and that's what we watched. Like, we watched the Bears be efficient on third down. We watched the Bears sustain long drives. We watched a mobile quarterback take advantage of no gap integrity, no edge integrity. And they did it well. So I don't know if I really put this on Halfley. I guess some of it obviously goes to coaching, because you have to coach guys appropriately to be able to do those things. But like, this is execution.
Mm. Yeah, and I think one of the things that we talked about yesterday during the game as well was we saw them playing far off again. We were like, "Oh, we really aggressive style of football," and then all of a sudden now they can't. So now he has to like but it's just there's not a comfort with the guys that are out there, and it's unfortunate also to hear that Jair was on a snap count and then felt like he couldn't go for much more than that because then you're worried about something lingering. We thought it was going to kind of be fixed after the bye and after the rest period. Doesn't sound like that's the case now. So hopefully he can play for longer and it's like something he can stay each week. But who knows? I mean, you can't bank on guys being healthy. You know, at this point, it's kind of it is what it is. Every team in the league has injuries to players, so they have to find ways to win without that. But let's talk about the final area, I guess, that we were pleasantly surprised by, and it was special teams.
Yeah.
How did you feel before the kick, I guess?
Oh, I thought they were going to lose. I said, that's it. You know, they convert a 3rd and 19. They let the Bears drive down the field. It's their fault. Like they lost this game for themselves. I didn't even want to watch, right? I was getting ready to go to dinner and I was like, I can't do it. I can't watch the Packers finally lose to the Bears. And then of course, whom I'm watching with starts screaming and I'm like, rewind, rewind. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it, especially because I texted you this too, but I said before the play, I'm like, we're not the Chiefs, right? We don't get luck where we block kicks or they miss kicks. Like that's not what's going to happen here. So kudos to the special teams like field goal unit because that was a huge play. And who knows what this win in the win column means for the end of the season. It's a divisional game. Like these games matter so much. Must have been so demoralizing for the Bears who like genuinely played so well. I think we give the special teams unit on this team a lot of crap.
Mm-hmm.
And so far this season, they have won them a lot of games. There have been a lot of close games that this special teams unit, whether it's been last minute field goals or this blocked kick, that they have won. So they deserved the one and only game ball. My cat agrees if you're watching the video version. Right? They deserved it. So really great play. Apparently they've been practicing it a lot. And it showed up.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I thought it was really interesting that Rich Bisaccia had said going into the game that he would be disappointed if they didn't come away with a blocked kick at some point, whether it was an extra point or a field goal, because they had studied what the Bears were doing and their formation and had thought a way that they had to block it. And sure enough, it worked. But yeah, I mean, we texted about this, but you know, I tell my husband we're supposed to go to dinner with my in-laws, and I'm like, if the Packers lose, I'm not going. Like, I'm not going to have people ask me about a Packers loss to the Bears. And then right when they missed the kick, I was like, all right, we can go to dinner. Like, it's just one of those things where like, and I think it was so frustrating because we talked about it. You have back-to-back sacks, and you're like, they're doing everything this defense needs to do to run out the clock and put the team in a position to win the game. Like the defense can hold here, and then they convert. And it's 3rd and so long. And you're like, okay, well, now it's a manageable kick. And that's the only thing that you had to avoid was getting into a situation where they could have a manageable kick. So thankful for the win. Obviously, Matt LaFleur 11-0 versus the Bears. It is now the longest streak in rivalry history, 11 straight wins for Green Bay. We'll see them. The last game of the regular season in January at Lambeau Field should be very cold. Hopefully there's some snow, but the Bears are going to want that one really bad. Yeah. So I put this on Blue Sky, but this can be, I think, a galvanizing moment for the Packers if they let it.
Yeah.
you can come out of this one and you can say, ugh, it was an ugly game, didn't play really good football. Or you can flip it and say, we stole this one, let's stack it. Because, I mean, you're going to be there next week at Lambeau, 49ers game. It's going to be a really good game. And they've got some really good games coming up. The Dolphins keep winning. They've got the Lions and the Vikings again coming up. So,
and the Lions just look
unbeatable.
So good.
Which makes it so frustrating that they almost beat them before the bye.
And like, to your point about the 49ers, right? The 49ers are coming to Lambeau off a loss. They don't want to stack losses.
They might not have Nick Bosa now too. Like,
it's not to your point about this record against the Bears, Matt LaFleur's record against Kyle is the opposite. It's not as good. And it's at home, but I think this is a great way to wrap up the show, is like, the way this team can walk away from this game and what they take from it is really important.
Yeah.
Whether they, look at themselves and say, okay, that's not our standard. Matt LaFleur said it in his post-game press conference. He said, I'm not going to apologize for winning. However, that is not how I want to win and going forward, basically, to summarize it. And so they can motivate themselves to do better from here on out and take on what I think is another really intense, long-standing NFC rivalry in the Niners next weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the perfect way to wrap it up. The offense, we talked about it, their arrow's up. The defense, unfortunately, their arrow is down right now, and they're going to have to figure out a way to right that arrow and change the direction of it, because it's not going to get any easier. And especially looking at the division, the Lions look like world beaters. The Vikings won again.
Yeah.
The playoff picture is getting really crowded. And if you don't win the games you're supposed to win, you're not going to make the playoffs this year. And yes, we think that some of these problems will probably be fixed in the draft and giving guys another season to develop, but you're just kicking the can down the road. And at some point, you have to capitalize on the opportunity. So hopefully this is momentum for the Packers moving forward. They historically play really well down the stretch, and they got a win. So we'll wrap it there. We'll be back later this week to talk Packers 49ers, a really, really good football game coming up. You can find us on YouTube at Pax What She Said Podcast, on Twitter and Blue Sky at Pax What She Said. Twitter is PWSS Podcast. Perri at Perri_Goldstein, Maggie at Maggie J. Loney. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back later this week. Celebrate the win. It doesn't always feel good, but it does always feel good to beat the Bears. So enjoy it and go Pack Go.
Go Pack Go.